105.7 Light FM, them red, hot chili peppers there. Is the market hot this morning? Well, let's find out.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.
And hello there, it's time to check in on money, and the legal beagle means that we got Phillip Statler from Statler Financial Services on the line, ready to flesh out what the Sam Hill is going on. Boy, yesterday ended up being just an absolute barrel of monkeys, wasn't it, Phillip?
Well, it was, Dave. It was, man, we just cannot buy a break here, it seems like. Every time Trump seems to say that word tariff, the markets just come crashing down. Last week was not a good week. At the future rates right now, Dave, actually, we are negative for 2025.
And that's not something you want to hear. Yeah, when we say barrel of monkeys, and the monkeys were hacked off yesterday. Dow ended up falling down by almost 650 points yesterday. Number one, we got the ISM Manufacturing Index, showed that U.S. output in the manufacturing sector was much lower than they expected. You saw a construction spending number that was off, and then the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank put out a projection that we were going to be looking at up to maybe even a 3% drop in the GDP growth during the first quarter when they start guessing at that. Heck, we haven't even gotten the third guesstimate on the fourth quarter yet, and we got one of our Federal Reserve banks saying we're going to shrink like a well, I've got all kinds of analogies for that, but it's extreme shrinkage during the first quarter. That just put everybody in a foul humor, and then Trump actually did put the tariffs on at the end of the day yesterday, and 650 on the Dow might actually be a high point for a little while, huh?
Yeah, and that was the best of the indexes, right? Being down 650. The S&P 500 was down 1.75%. That's almost $105. The NASDAQ, even worse than that, down $497, 2.65%. And then to beat that one, Dave, the Russell 2000, down 2.81%, $61. It was a ugly day yesterday.
About the only people that made money were ones that bought the VIX, I'd imagine, right?
Probably so. And let's add this one in, Dave, because I saw a blotter that the Bitcoin is back down to about where it was when Mr. Trump was elected president. I think it's at $83,000 today. That's down another 2.8% this morning.
Now, that honestly kind of surprises me after President Trump announced that he wanted to start a Bitcoin reserve the other day.
Yeah, but something I read, I saw a headline, I didn't get a chance to really dive down. Something about, he's reversing that announcement or something. I didn't, like I said, I just saw a headline real quick as I was trying to get ready this morning. And, or maybe it's just they're upset about him doing that. I don't know, but there's some turbulence because of that.
And it's whether you agree with him or disagree with him, politics doesn't really have a place in this, because I've always said money can make money no matter what the politics are. But the news cycle has ceased to be a daily news cycle or even a 24-hour news cycle. It's basically 24/7, 365 now. Something can change at 2 in the morning.
By the minute, right? By the minute,
yeah, exactly.
It can change.
Yeah, I mean, one of Trump's advisors was saying that the strategy for the beginning of the administration was to flood the zone with news, and by gosh, he's succeeding after that without any doubt whatsoever. Bottom line is, 2 weeks ago, we're talking negative for the year. 2 weeks ago, the S&P 500 closed at a record high. We closed the Monday session down 4.8% from that record high. A little volatility is not necessarily a good thing when the momentum is downward, is it?
No, it's not. It's been a rough February, and the March is definitely not off to a good start with all the tariffs and all the things coming about. The fear, Dave, is that those tariffs, and rightly so, are going to cause inflation. And Trump really hasn't put anything out there to say, how are we going to deal with that inflation? Other than obviously he wants free money, but that's I disagree with him there too because that's definitely not the way that we need to do it because that'll just escalate inflation down the road. So, he's got a lot to deal with, and I know he's a guy that likes to, puff up and basically, put his marbles on the table and say this is what we're going to do until you cave. We'll just have to see how fast they cave, I guess.
And he does have a habit of spitballing in advance. I mean, we were talking about basically the tariffs going on board on like the 21st of the 21st of January, the day after the inauguration. We put them off this much time, so there was some doubt yesterday that this was actually going to happen. And when it became imminent at midnight, oh yeah, we're really going to do this junk. Something I was saying yesterday too. It always helps to remember that yes, it is not unreasonable to expect tariffs to provide a bump upward on prices and hence inflation. But we got to look back 4.5, 5 years ago when we had that ill-fated trade war with China and we had tariffs there. Our inflation rate did not go up that much. The partners that we trade with, that we impose the tariffs on, very often absorb a good part of that. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen now, but it isn't a guaranteed slam dunk that a 25% tariff on Canadian goods coming into the country is going to result in a 25% price increase. Yes, it could, but it ain't necessarily always going to happen because it didn't necessarily happen with China in his first term.
Well, that's true. I mean, it is just one of those things that makes you concerned about what could happen.
Yep.
I will say this, though. There is one of the companies that put out a little blurb, Illumina, which is a biotech company, is falling this morning because China, in their retaliatory move, has banned the import of their gene sequencer. And so, it's not always a tariff. Sometimes there's a total ban. And so
And there's very often
they're
And
getting
the
hit by
political
that.
the political tit for tat is going to be interesting to watch in the process. China did exactly the same thing they did during our last Trump trade war with China. They banned the bulk of our agricultural goods going into their marketplace. Well, that's not good for our farmers, but it's also not necessarily good for China with a problem with deflation because now they're stuck putting more of their resources into the agricultural economy over there in order to make up for the goods that they've been importing from us. And they've got 2 consistent years of deflation issues, which you and I have talked about for a long time, that when there's the risk of that in our economy, that makes everybody's hair stand on end. Well, they've got 2 years of a problem that scares the living crud out of us. It's a different playing field than it was last time as well on the tariff front, at the very least with the Far East.
Well, that's true. And in the crosshairs is Europe, right? Because he's talking about, doing retaliatory type of tariffs against countries in over in Europe because, he tit for tat. He wants to make sure that we are getting treated fairly in the world economy.
And European markets, when we get to them, are not the least bit impressed this morning, halfway through their trading day. Oh, by the way, before we went on the air, you were razzing me about what was wrong with NVIDIA, and I was having fun with them at the end of the week last week because even though they beat all the street estimates and really kicked butt, they still ended up trading downward. One more problem with our dear friends at NVIDIA, they were down 7.5% yesterday, not even related to the tariffs and the rest. It seems that Singapore said it's thinking that maybe some servers shipped to Malaysia containing chips that NVIDIA makes and were banned from China ended up getting smuggled into the mainland. So NVIDIA is now looking at, oh my gosh, maybe we're in trouble with our own government. So they fell another 7.5% yesterday. I think they're now at a 5-year low.
Yeah, it's not good. I think I saw where Nvidia is back to the price it was in September, in terms of that. But it's not good. It's been an ugly time, and hopefully we can find some bottoms and start bouncing back up.
One would hope. It's a very quiet day on the government data dump. Heaven knows the news cycle did a good enough job in terms of giving us something to talk about this morning. But it's going to be a busy week. We're going to start hearing from the employment front tomorrow with the ADP private employment estimate. We're going to get the first-time jobless claims on Thursday, and then on Friday, that I always say the ostensive, fictitious federal unemployment rate along with the jobs added figures. So we got a lot of market mover stuff going on today, don't we?
We really do. And then we've got some reports that have come out too, like Target.
Yes,
Target
how'd they do?
really not a bad quarter for them. They earned $2.41 versus $2.26 expected. Revenue ahead of expectations as well. Now, the management did warn that the first quarter of 2025 that they're going to see some year-over-year profit pressure. And they use the word meaningful. I don't know what that means, but definitely they're looking at possibly some pressure. They're trading down 4% this morning before we get going. Best Buy came out, and they had a pretty decent quarter as well, beat on earnings and on revenue. Now, they did say that the tariffs very well are going to put some pressure on pricing. And so that's going to maybe hurt them this next quarter. They're down 3.75% this morning. So everybody's looking at those tariffs and really thinking, okay, it's going to be a tough quarter.
But, you look at them saying pressure on pricing, that kind of gives, again, a little bit of that model. Don't get me wrong, I don't like tariffs. But it does imply these guys are planning on absorbing a good portion of it, the manufacturer on the input side and the retailer on the output side. It ain't going to help them one bit when they get to the first quarter reports. But at the same time, it kind of allays some of my fears that we're going to see that, 25% in, 25% out thing that all of the press is talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, that number sounds big, but you're right. Everybody's going to eat it, but it's going to affect corporate revenue and corporate profits.
Exactly. Profit's going to be down in retail. That's almost a guarantee. If you sell a lot of junk from China, you're going to have a skinnier profit margin because the consumer's not going to put up with a 10% price increase, are they?
No, not when it's that. They'll look to see what they can buy at home, even though home prices may be higher than over there. They may not be high enough.
Absolutely. Resetting the table, kind of a bloodbath yesterday in advance of the tariffs announcement. I'm looking at pretty much downward slopes all night as far as the futures are concerned, although they don't look quite as bad as yesterday's close. 45 minutes before we open, what are we looking at?
Thankfully, they don't look as bad as yesterday's close, Dave. We've got the Dow down almost 1/3% this morning. That's $29. S&P 500 is down a little over 0.6. That's $38. And the NASDAQ 100 down 0.7, almost $145. And then the big down today is still the Russell 2000 down another 1.1%, or about $23. So, obviously the VIX is heading up, one of the higher numbers we've seen in a while. So a lot of red ink out there. Even on the other side, silver is eking up just a little bit, up about 1/4%. Gold's taking a big jump this morning, though, I guess, on the tariff fear, up almost 1.1%, trying to get back to 3,000s at $2,932 an ounce right now. And then crude oil. I noticed gas prices heading down, so I knew crude oil had to be falling, down 1.25% to $67.51 a barrel right now.
I got to assume that dive is based on an expectation that because we're not trading as much, we're not expecting to trade as much, we're going to have an oil glut on this side of the pond. That's the only guess I can think of as to why the futures traders tanked the price of oil overnight. But I'll take the expectation on the short term.
I will too, definitely.
Looking across the pond, the Asian Rim market was not happy overall. Curiously, the mainland Chinese markets were up fractionally, but almost everybody else was off precipitously on the Asian Rim this morning at the close. Europe is unimpressed by our tariff policy. The average European market is down by about 1.5% to maybe 1.75% halfway through their trading day today over on that side of the Atlantic. So nobody's impressed so far financially. Somebody want to look at their financial future and plan a retirement? Well, all of a sudden your plans may need to change if you're doing it on a day-to-day basis. How do I find you to get that day-to-day out of my retirement planning?
Absolutely, Dave. And give us a call at 863-382-0037, because that's why I developed the core retirement design, to make sure the risk they have in their portfolio lines up with where it should be. And then join us this weekend for the Statler Financial Radio Show, 6 a.m. and noon on Saturday, 10 a.m. Sunday morning on Highlands News Talk, 7:30 a.m. and 95.3 FM.
And us together tomorrow again, about the same time on Light. Find out what's likely to affect our money tomorrow. I'll see you then.
All right, buddy. Have a great day.
Thank you. It's 105.7 Light FM and Statler Financial Services. Phillip Statler.
Hey, folks, again, I want to thank you for joining us today. Hope your week's off to a good start. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye now.